I'm Martin Lukas Ostachowski. I'm a new media artist based in Montreal, Canada. I've been very interested in digital art. I've discovered cryptocurrencies fairly early, been a crypto artist since 2018, participated in a position paper in 2019, and about 2020 I started documenting the space and really trying to capture the entire movement, which goes much beyond what people think it is. So in my piece here, Cumulonimbus Murus, which is the meteorological term for like a wall cloud, I tried to play with the series I work on using clouds basically as a symbolism for the blockchain movement or the blockchain art movement, because it is based on intangible values. We look at constant transformation, and it is some sort of a manifestation because people believe in it and maintain that network and blockchain, it exists. However, if people would stop believing in it and disconnecting their nodes, the whole ecosystem would just disappear like a cloud. And I think that symbolism is very interesting to play with because there's a lot of analogies. So for this Cumulonimbus Murus, which is like a storm cloud, a wall cloud, it is basically an extremely powerful cloud which forms basically or builds the base from which tornadoes could evolve. And I think as such it was a very powerful symbolic for this movement. While I maintain usually the documentation of crypto art in a more linear way through a timeline, for this exhibition I chose to really try to categorize it and put it together in a sequence of 10 blocks, building blocks, which really informed this entire movement, really starting from the values, because I think the values is something which is not enough spoken about, really where does these idea of like centralization, decentralization, where does these ideas of like self-governance really originate in? And as such, it's interesting to really draw the history, not when the NFT hype started, but really like starting it when cryptocurrencies occurred, trying to explain, the environment it occurred, and from which, it derived its own values, like in the cypherpunk movement and things as such. Now, as we progress over these building blocks, we see the development like from tokens, we see which role games played in this development, we see the impact on art. And I think they're always accompanied with digital pieces. And in the center section, I kind of tried to showcase a proposed definition, because there is no, in such a nascent movement, there's still no general definitions. And as such, I try and propose a definition model, and I show a range of kind of sequential, physical Bitcoin art, because I found it very interesting to highlight a few artists which have been extremely influential in the space, but since the narrative shifted towards the Ethereum blockchain, are not necessarily spoken about anymore, or not enough. I think it's important to document a movement which is so nascent, because really the whole attention to the space came only with the money, right? When this huge auction in 2021 took place, the discussion focused entirely on NFTs, entirely disregarding the rich past, which was informed by values, which was informed by a sequence of developments which are entirely forgotten and talked about. So when this entire discussion shifted, I found it even more important to really create resources, because there are hardly any available, right? Even in my research, I had to look back and go like through Bitcoin forums, mailing lists, and not necessarily academic sources, just in order to kind of put together some of core milestones and discover artists and artworks. So I think looking forward, it's just interesting to see that over time we kind of shift the narrative back and see NFT as what it is. It's a digital medium and a subset of crypto art. And I think with this exhibition, I'm quite excited to see that there's a wide range of artists here which are here from an early time on, and also informed the space, which goes even beyond this idea of an NFT alone. From a technological perspective, we went through an entire series of evolutions. Everything really derived from the currency Bitcoin, right? which was soon discovered as being not only a currency, but also a potential technological platform for other applications. We went then through an iteration of kind of like conceptual ideas of a token, which was mostly driven by individual artists and technologists and some few trading card collectible companies or gaming companies, if you want to. And really where it shifted towards like, with this project like the Rare Pepe, towards like a creative community where people came together and created processes which would significantly simplify the process of tokenization. And that really brought in a lot of people into the space because, you know, it made it accessible. Moving forward, you know, we went through a lot of evolutions of this cryptocurrency-based tokens, then towards what we call today an NFT, a non-fungible idea. And this happened initially on second layer applications. For instance, on Bitcoin, it happened on Counterparty. This was like an application layer which was used to tokenize assets. And then as the fees on Bitcoin became very prohibitive and expensive, the entire development shifted to the Ethereum landscape where, you know, it was fairly easy to create smart contracts and create tokens. Then from a very fungible token standard, projects like, for instance, the CryptoPunks created some sort of a hybrid standard which allowed non-fungible unique attributes to something which in theory is still a currency. And from there it evolved then with a project called CryptoKitties, which really introduced the ERC 721 standard, which is now one of the most common NFT standards. And non-fungible token really is the long form of an NFT. From there on, you know, we have already in the past seen a lot of conceptual approaches to it where it doesn't necessarily have a visual representation, but technologically we've seen the same development we saw before in Bitcoin where the cost became very prohibitive. The same happened in Ethereum. So as that happened, we saw the development shifting again to other blockchains and second layer solutions because the cost is always like an entry barrier for a lot of people. Now, from an aesthetical perspective, for me, crypto art is much more about values than it is necessarily about visuals. But if I would have to say, how did it aesthetically evolve? You know, we came from really a mimetic culture, right? I think, and that's a very powerful, I think, artistic movement in itself because it is heavily underrated. At the same time, it offers like a hyper-contemporary social comment. Right? Like within hours or minutes even, people can react to like world events and things like that. So in projects like Rare Pepe, we saw like really the meme dominance in this theme. And here in this artwork, I tried to really showcase basically two main themes or streams which I found are still influential until today. And one is really the documentation of this blockchain development through memes, and the other one is social activism or intentional activism, which goes towards like, okay, we have discovered this technology, which, you know, has a lot of benefits for a lot of people, but maybe in the Western world, we don't necessarily see the advantages as evident as people like in developing countries who fight, you know, double-digit inflation rates and things like that. So these are the kind of two developments I see, but within itself, if we look at the NFTs, I'd say there are certainly certain currents which are kind of mimicking to some extent the traditional artwork currents, but at a way faster time, right? So we had, and this is also driven by technological possibilities. So in the beginning, we saw mostly conceptual approaches and then animated GIFs. We saw some JPEGs because there was also not only a file limitation, but also a file size limitations. So when the development of market platforms occurred, these platforms, which are non-artist led then, really pushed the boundaries of the technical standards further. So we saw an increase in file sizes, we saw the inclusion of, for instance, MP4 data, we saw 3D objects, and that really pushed it towards, okay, it also allows then for a much broader, more interesting exploration because the limitation of this file size or file format no longer existed. There's a lot of criticism about artificial intelligence being used for image creation or even video creations, and I think when I look at it in a crypto art context, I really think there shouldn't be like any boundaries or barriers, right? The whole idea of crypto art was that we discover a technology which offers us to really bypass this traditional, very linear art world model, right? Where you have to like follow a very linear path in order to make it through the art world, right? You go for your group exhibitions and so on. So here you have a system where you don't have to go like through a year-long journey in order to participate in the art world, because we have marketplaces and the technological means basically to enter fairly quickly, even like as a student or whatever, without a long history, and really be on the same marketplaces like established artists and things like that. So in that sense, I found that through crypto art, there's like a huge concept of democratization. And as such, NFTs as a subset of crypto art is really a mere medium, right? Which should not be limited to one form of art or another, right? However, you see within the development, there are certain things which seem to come as currents because they might be popular in marketplaces. Some marketplaces even faster than certain developments. So we saw, for instance, trends of like, we had 3D, we then had photography, we have currently like poetry, and there's like artificial intelligence, and these are like all like currents which are coming fairly quickly, and then as they reach a saturation point, then they invite always exploration, right? Because if everybody can do it, it's kind of like accessible to everybody, then you have to really get creative. And I think as such, I get the criticism on it, but it's a tool. If everybody can do it, that's great, but the people who will use it in a different way, in an innovative way, they will stand out.